And you're live on Joy 99.7 FM. This is Ghana Connect. My name is Evans Mensah.
Because of their business, to look down upon this town, make this town look very negative. But we all know in this country that when people justice somewhere and they don't get it, the only place they come is Nogokpo.
In reference to Nogokpo, I wish to clarify that I never intended to refer to the town, but rather make reference to an incident that happened after a crusade at Aflao. I had absolutely no intention to cast a slur upon the people of the Nogokpo town and the Volta region as a whole.
So this week, the Peace Council issued a statement, and they were worried that this impasse just had there between the Perez Chapel International and Nogokpo traditional authorities, if not quickly addressed, may quote, have consequences on peaceful coexistence and religious tolerance in the country. Now, of course, if you don't know, the controversy started when the Archbishop Charles Agyin Asare, the founder of the Perez Chapel International, made pronouncements that the traditional authorities in Nogokpo found offensive. We need to ask, on the back of this controversy and the Peace Council's own concerns about a threat to religious tolerance, how can Ghana consolidate the religious harmony and the tolerance that make us so unique? You know, we Ghanaians are so unique when it comes to how we can coexist with our religious friends on the other side. And the Peace Council is really concerned that this really may push us to a place where that harmony, that tolerance that we've celebrated for years may unravel. Are they really that fear that they've expressed? Is this founded? Let's have a conversation on this, and I have a few connectors who are joining us tonight with thoughts on this. And wherever you are tonight, remember you can also connect with us 055-111-1997. Go on to Twitter, hit me up at Nuete. Abdul Karim Ibrahim is a graduate student at the University of the African Studies Department of the University of Ghana. He's also a researcher with focus and interest in decolonization, currently working at the University of Freiburg. He is also a journalist and a devout Muslim. Abdul.
Hi, Evans.
I feel so abandoned, but it's okay.
I'm sorry.
When you get to go to Freiburg, you leave those of us behind, and we lose friends. You just have to bring me some of the euros, if you don't mind.
Pleasure to be here.
But great to have you connecting, Abdul Karim. Also connecting with us is Dr. Bernard Teria Odai. He is a food scientist, but also an evangelist. He comes to this conversation with a unique perspective. Hello, Dr. Bernard. Hello, Dr. Bernard. Okay, let's see if you can unmute for me so I can hear your voice. Dr. Teria Odai will connect with us shortly. Doc, please unmute and say hello if you can still hear me. Also connecting with us is Nana Ansakwa. You know him. He's a chief of Dumasa. He's a broadcaster himself. He's a host of That's My Opinion on Joy FM. As you know, the traditional authorities who took this matter on quite strongly. And he connects with his own views on this matter.
Okay, I'm online.
Hi, Dr. Teria, how are you, sir? Me? I can hear you loud and clear.
I'm online now.
Oh, I can hear you. How are you, sir?
Yeah. I'm fine, sir.
Great to connect with us. Hello, Nana. Hello, Nana.
Yeah, hello, Evan. Great to connect.
Great to have you connecting. I'm looking forward to picking your thoughts on this. And I want to start with the obvious question. Karim, let me start with you. You are a devout Muslim, right? I mean, and here's the thing about us Ghanaians: we celebrate this unique coexistence, and harmony, and tolerance that we've celebrated for years. This religious tolerance that we've had is what defines us. If you go out, people really look to us Ghanaians, and they really, if you go to countries where religious divisions have led to conflict, they really celebrate us. So when you heard this back and forth, I wonder whether it struck a nerve. Seeing how when I was in school, my best friend was a Muslim, for example. I mean, and so that's the reality. You had this back and forth. How did you take it?
Yeah, so I was not surprised, but I was very excited that for the first time, and I say it in the context of some real backlash, we're seeing those that we often would term broadly as practitioners of African traditional religion. I don't know what that means, but I was seeing some pushback from that end in a way that I was very, very happy about. I mean, I have my own reservations about the way authority, pretty much like our Supreme Court, likes to just go about and summoning people and all of that. But I like the idea that they were pushing back. And I should state this, that I come into this conversation from a very interesting positionality. I come from a family that almost entirely has half of it being Christians, half of it being Muslims. And so I have lived this and I have experienced all of this in very great way and very great detail that allows me to be able to speak on this matter, and nobody can take away the experiences that I shared. So when you talk about, for instance, the idea that Ghana's, religious tolerance is up there, people enjoy it, people speak very highly of it and all of that, I think that is true and that is great. But that is also very, very largely superficial in the way that it's done. Because, for instance, if I tell you about my own experience and what I went through in Konongo Dumasi Senior High School, by no metric a missionary school in the sense of how we often use that as an excuse to do many of the things that we do. But, and I would not also say that my experience was entirely bad. I mean, I lived in Konongo literally all my life, went to school there, eventually became school prefect. But I'll share with you an experience that I had perhaps in the first week when I got to the school. So the school used to have what we call cell meetings, which is like Christian service denominations that happen at the various houses. And I remember there was a time when the head prefect came around with the belt, lashing everybody to go for cell meeting. And even for Christians, I would not expect that everybody would go because SDAs did not do the kinds of things that they were doing. And I opened my mouth to say, I am a Muslim. And the response that I got was that, and so what? Get away from here and go for the cell meeting. I mean, I went there briefly and left. But I'm sure that many other people can express feelings and sentiments like this all across. Not long ago, you remember, when the students from Wesley Girls Senior High School talked about their experiences in school, sometimes even being prevented from taking their Quran to school, among many other things like that. We got all manner of interesting engagements about it. In the University of Ghana, when I was doing my undergraduate, and many of your colleagues at Joy News will be able to tell you this, there was a very serious contest, SRC contest that happened at some time, I think 2015. And the two candidates that were leading, one obviously a Christian, the other Muslim, nothing to do with the candidates per se, but the general commentary around at that time got a lot of us coming actively to engage in the issues that were happening. Because some of the articles that I remember people putting across at that time was that, Christians should not be unevenly yoked with Muslims in this regard because the Muslim candidate looked like the favorite to win the election. Let me add one more bit and then maybe others can come in. Our very own former president, John Evans Atta Mills, even against the backdrop of the fact that the Constitution recognizes that Ghana is a pluralistic society in terms of its religious orientations and the freedoms that exist within. If you look at a place like Greater Accra region, that we know very well, the Ghana people have their own traditional spiritual belief systems, among other things like that. And almost every other place in the country may have their own. What did we see? We have events that we allow Muslims and Christians, and often also because of perhaps of the numbers, but in his time, it was very categorical that he needed and didn't want anything to do with so-called African traditional religion. In our schools, we've learned about all manner of nonsense about the characterizations and distinguishing between different gods and calling those that are relatively indigenous to us as smaller gods, and all of those nonsense that we keep telling ourselves. So I was not surprised to see that spiritual grandstanding and arrogance from Archbishop or Bishop Agyin Asare. And so for me, that's why I said that I was happy that for the first time in real engagement, we got the people from Nogokpo and many others say that enough is enough. The Peace Council have a point, but they cannot always wait and expect that minority people would accept all of this disrespect and contempt And only when they push back, then they realize that all of a sudden we have some peace to protect.
Let me bring in Nana Sakwa, who obviously is a traditional ruler himself. Nana, when you also represent a group of people. So when you heard this story break and the storm it gathered, what was your reaction to it?
Thank you. Evans, permit me to go back just a little bit. And this is one thing that cuts across, where we are all indoctrinated to believe. It's not said or written, but somehow implied that once you are Black or African, all your customs and traditions and your beliefs and your religion may have come from Lucifer, Satan, or a lesser place. And therefore, to be redeemed, you must now forget everything and then follow something more of a Jewish or an Arabic faith before you be acceptable in God. So it is as though God made a mistake in creating all things Black and African and Ghanaian. It is as though that whatever it is God did was a mistake. And so in order for us to correct it, we must now follow the Jewish principles, the Arabic principles, change our name, our language, our clothing, everything in order to be good in the sight of God. So then the question is that, did God make a mistake in creating Africa and the cultures and customs that exist here? If it is yes, then let us toe that line. If it is no, then why all this hula baloo? As far as deities and shrines are concerned, and again, if it's Western, then it's a church. If it's African, then it's a shrine. If it's Western, it's an altar. If it's African, then it cannot be an altar. It has to be something. So we give all these names. If you are white, you are a saint. If you are Black, you are an ancestor. So we see we brand ourselves with all these things and turn around and eat ourselves up. You have shrines dotted across the country, churches and mosques dotted across the countries. Evans, they are absolutely good churches, and they are absolutely filthy churches that you don't have to touch with a barge pole. It's the same as shrines. But I'm telling you that any indigenous religion, shrine, Black stew, chief, the rules that you abide by, you'll be amazed. I mean, you will find them all in Leviticus chapter 19. Don't cheat, don't drink and disorderly, don't kill, don't disrespect. I mean, all those things is any true indigenous religion. Don't go near unclean spirits. Don't go near human blood. Don't go near anything that is cheating. That's what a true tradition, religion, that's what you have to abide by. But somehow, I don't know whether we haven't told our story, whether we haven't branded ourselves well, but we are all just, as soon as you talk, even this weekend is Akosidai, and I'll be going to Edumasa. And when I say Akosidai, people want to, basically exercise me, because they think by the time I come, I would have slaughtered 3 babies and drank human blood. Even all it is, it's a town hall meeting. I'm just going to sit and listen to the problems of the Edumasa people. The water is getting unclean, or the school, or this, or that, and they will bombard me with all that problem, and I have to find a solution. And I have to do that once every 6 weeks. That's all Akosidai is about. But I tell you, there are even Akan who don't know what Akosidai is. They think it's something wrong. There are people in the Edumasa who think, it's Akosidai for me, I'm going to church. Really? But if I told them to come to a town hall meeting, they would all come. The same thing. If I gave it a Western name, they would turn up. But if I call it Akosidai, they won't turn up. So that's what is eating us up. You see, that's what is eating us up. If we haven't taken our time to find out the virtues, the do's, the don'ts, and everything. Now, before Western religion came, we operated on cause and effect. Cause and effect. We believe that for every cause, there was an effect. When Western religion came, they came with cause, regret, and forgive. So we also change. So now, even if you have two bicycles and I don't have one, and my school is really far, and you actually don't even use the one, I'll steal your second bike and pray to God that, look, you know Evans is not even using this bike.
And Anna, you've touched on something I want to explore with evangelist Dr. Teria. I mean, evangelist, if you listen to Karim and Nana, is this purely a case of misunderstanding each other? And maybe this is an opportunity then to sit around a table and promote a certain conversation that leads to a better understanding of each other's religions.
All right, thank you. Tentatively, I would want to let the audience understand that Christianity has never been the religion of the white man. Christianity is God Himself looking for the fallen man according to the Bible. So Christianity is not the religion of the white man. It is God Himself. Now, I heard him say that, or him making reference to some things in the Leviticus. Now, if you look at that, so let me build my point from the Old Testament into the New Testament. If you look at it critically, all that happened in the Old Testament was a shadow of Christ, pointing us to Christ Jesus. And then Jesus comes in to fulfill what is in the Old Testament, opening the door for everyone to come to God through Him. And so the standard of Christ is what Christians emulate. However, there have been instances which, when you look into church history, let me just use the word church history for clarity's sake. There have been instances when you look into church history, because of deviations and back and forth, at times people feel that Christianity is the religion of the white man. But when there had been a personal encounter with Christ, then they draw the conclusion that no, it is not the religion of the white man. But in actual fact, it is God through Christ getting men unto Himself. And throughout the centuries, you will see that Christians, and here, let me be very categorical. If I say Christians here, I am talking about those who have had their sins forgiven, and the Spirit of God bears witness with their spirit that they are children of God. These individuals have coexisted peacefully with their neighbors. Now, genuine Christians mostly are actually derided, ridiculed for their stand. Now, let me give you, he gave a background of when he was in secondary
school, yes.
I have found myself also with Muslims. In fact, I have friends who are Muslims, and I know how I talk to them. Now, contextually, if you look at Matthew chapter 5, you will see that Christians, and here I go back to the statement I made earlier, I'm talking about individuals who have had their sins forgiven and they have Christ as their Lord and Savior, and the Spirit of God bears witness with their spirit. These individuals have always endeavored to live at peace with all people around them, because they admonish in Matthew chapter 5, in Hebrews chapter 12, then in verse 14, that they are to follow peace with all men. However, there is a caveat. I'll come to that later as the conversation continues.
I mean, and I want to come to the point that the Peace Council raised and the fundamental question we're asking. So all of you have laid the foundation, and it is very clear that there is some missing link there. Nana, let me come back to you, and I'll come back to Karim. So Nana, I mean, how do we consolidate this religious tolerance, this harmony? First of all, I mean, Karim makes a point. This religious harmony and tolerance that we celebrate, is it superficial?
I don't think it's superficial. I think by and large there's quite a good amount of religious tolerance in Ghana. I think by and large, as you say, your best friend was Muslim. I think by and large, it's just that they are the odd ones which is born probably out of ignorance. Rather than anything else, born out of ignorance rather than anything else. Because you see, the evangelist was talking about the true Christian being very accommodating. Evans, the true traditionalist is so accommodative that, Evans, because you are a girl, if you move to settle in a Dumasa, because nobody even should talk about where you came from. That's how you are able to assimilate into the system. And that's why you go to places like Kumasi, and there's Fanti New Town, Angroga, and this, and they are so assimilated into the system that you don't go and tell them that these people are not from here. So the true traditionalist is, you see, Evan, apart from the Christ aspect of fellowship, there isn't that much that these religions brought that as Africans we did not practice anyway. We protected children, we respected our adults, we did not steal, kill, commit murder. All these things are in the African society. The beauty about Christianity was that it brought a sort of uniformity. So that if I'm in a Dumasa, I'm practicing a little faith. I move 100 yards and the faith changes. However, now that I'm a Christian, I could travel from Accra to Tamale and the faith is still the same. But let's just ask ourselves, what have we done with that uniformity? Now that I am a Christian, what have we done with that uniformity? The chances of you not being, look, Evans, people are setting up hotels and big businesses here. And why are they hiring non-Christians to manage it? You see, so the Christ aspect of religion has lost its purpose, or we are losing its purpose. So that's the only thing. There's nothing in the Bible which, as an African, you don't practice anyway. You have days where you fast. You have days to be, solitary and keep quiet. Your first harvest, you have to, give to the community. All those things, Evans, we practice. The only thing was the Christ aspect. And apart from that, what is so different in the religion? So once they brought that Christ aspect, well, now we have to be unified. Look at how divisive we are. And, as Sheikh Arimiyah have we become fashionistas in religion rather than spiritualists. We don't practice it. Last Friday, I went to church. It was my uncle's funeral. I witnessed something which was so beautiful. Look, after the church service, we all came to the car park. I was waiting, and I was just sitting there, and I was watching people. Everybody cutting the edge of Nobody wanted another car to come in front of him to leave the church. And I was thinking, that's the end of the Christianity. As soon as the pastor said amen, everybody cutting people up. Soldiers have to come and direct people leaving church. Evans.
Nana, let me bring in another Nana Kofi Akwa, a good friend of mine. He's an international photojournalist, well-traveled, but he's also a pastor. He's seen it all. Conflict-prone countries, etc. Has lived and eating with people from all cultures and religions, and connects with us via Zoom. Now, hello, Nana.
Hello.
Hey, great to have you. Great to have you. Great to have you connecting.
Joy 99.7.
Yeah, it has been. Let me ask you, on the back of the conversation we had so far, is there a case for Christians to reach out more to the other religions, to their friends in the other religions. I'm looking at it within the Ghanaian context, so we can consolidate the gains when it comes to religious tolerance.
I mean, I think that will be phase two. I think phase one will be Christians would have to look inwards. Phase one, we have to look inwards at all the toxicity and hate speech and discriminatory language and disrespectful language that we have used for years, that we are so conditioned to use that we don't realize that actually it is very anti-community. So we have to start from there. The songs were taught as kids, and all that, and all these testimonies, what happened recently, and even now, I'm reading comments on Facebook about basically vilifying the victims further. But they are sitting in their and of all the things somebody could say, they decided to vilify them. This is not an essential part of the Christian faith if we really look at it. There is so much language we use, and one of the most humbling statements I heard that really helped me was that everybody was going to hell in somebody else's religion. As a born-again Christian, I believe very, very strongly that I'm going to heaven. And other people who don't believe what I believe, according to my faith, are going to hell. Well, in their faith, they believe very, very strongly that they are going to heaven. And because I don't believe what they believe, I am going to hell. Once you understand that, it calls for humility. And as Christian leaders, I want to really encourage us. Listen, there's so much we spew from our pulpits and we teach in our churches that are just toxic and terrible. Listen, something as simple as praying that witches should die. Anybody who hates me should die. And then we'll be... And I'm like, so what's the difference between you who prays for somebody to die and the person who takes a gun and kills somebody? You have the same kind of heart. My boss didn't promote me, so I'm praying that they should die. I'm pouring the wrath of God on them. There is so much that is normalized, that is actually very violent, anti-progressive, anti-development, and we have to start from there. We have to ask ourselves, why are we so unkind? Even in something as simple as how we take offering. I've been to churches where those who can give more are given special prayers, maybe called to the front, hands are laid on them, and those who can give coins, they just receive very generic prayer and funny comments are made about them. I'm like, why? Why are we so discriminatory and so disrespectful? I've been in churches where I remember one time walking into a church with a friend who actually was owing me money. He was in a suit and I was in a t-shirt. The usher blocked me and marched him forward to the front row. And I was pushed to the back there somewhere.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what kind of Bible are we reading? So even before we engage with other religions, listen, there's so much we are doing that absolutely does not represent Christ. Even how we talk about other denominations, the kind of things we say from our pulpits, it's terrible. If you were to sit down, and some of us, like I grew up in church, so for the longest time, I wasn't even aware. And I'm sure there are people listening to me who are surprised. Like, is this guy a pastor? Why is he talking like this?
Well, I can tell them that you're a pastor indeed of a particular church that I know. I still have to come and visit. I have the money to come. Yes, you are.
And so once we are able to do that, we'll see our brother in the Muslim, we'll see our brother in the Hindu, we'll see our sister in the, because unless we do that, it becomes difficult to... There are families that are divided because parents have evicted their children from home because they no longer believe. It's terrible.
Yeah, Nana, stay with me. Let me introduce you to Dr. Teria, who is an evangelist. Dog, can you interact with Nana, who is also a pastor? Yeah, what do you make of his thoughts on this?
Yes. So, personally, like he said, I've also had the opportunity to visit denominations, listen to other Christians in court. And there have been instances, personally, I see some excesses which shouldn't be in church. At times, you sit back and you critically analyze. Let me just use an example. Okay. Now, I'm going to talk on noise pollution. You see a simple auditorium, and the way the auditorium is fashioned, actually, that is the inside people that are being addressed. But you get to some places and they rather put the loudspeakers outside. And when you look into the auditorium, you have just a handful of people. So at times I tend to ask myself, the people you are addressing, they are inside. So why there is so much noise pollution? That is one. So there are instances at some of the places when I visit and I realize that, in fact, you can't do anything about it. And like he talked about this sort of discrimination in church. In fact, this is something that James, the beloved, in the book of James talked about. Yes, there are certain things that had crept, like Paul the Apostle said, had crept into the church unawares, and they have been accepted as they are supposed to be. I will not deny the fact that there are some things that are done in church, which if Jesus appears today, he is going to, in fact, even beat us more than what he did when he was on earth physically. When, he was with the Jews, that he drove them, he started lashing them because they were telling the church.
And let me ask if that may include our tolerance of other religions.
Now,
It doesn't.
let me help you get this thing clearly based on how you asked the question. Look at Jesus according to the synoptic gospel, Matthew, Mark, Luke, right? And then look at the non-synoptic gospel, that is the fourth one, that is the book of John. You will see that Jesus existed among the Pharisees. He had ways and means of handling them. And when you look at it critically, because of his stand, there were times, there were some few crosshairs. There were times that he had to go contrary to what they believe. I'm talking about the Pharisees, the Jews, then the Pharisees, and then the Sadducees, and help them to understand what he wants to show them. But he did it with wisdom. So all that I want to say here is this. You see, if you are packaging what you believe to other people, like Paul the Apostle said, he said this, I have become all things to all men that I by all means can win some. So here, there is some level of wisdom that is required for coexistence. So Christ Jesus really showed so much wisdom. That is why, according to the Gospels, when he was even, how do I call it? He was before Pilate and he was cross-examined. He said, no, I find no fault in the man. And so here we have to, a Christian, a child of God, should ask for wisdom how to live with other people. Bear it in mind, I started on the premise of peace. Jesus said, blessed are the peacemakers. At a point in time, he said, I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. And then Paul, in one of his epistles to the Romans, he said, he said that as much as it lies in us, let us live at peace with all men. So you come to Hebrews 12:14, he said that follow peace with all men. So as we live in the midst of people, we need wisdom so that we will be at peace with them.
So that possibly could be a challenge then. I mean, if we need that, is it that possibly we lack that wisdom? And then Kofi Akpop, very quickly again, then I'll get Karim in. You mentioned the things that we as Christians need to look internal to improve first. Would you say that that would include our tolerance of others, other religions?
Yes, it's crucial. We have many commandments in the Bible. And then Jesus, at some point in his ministry, had to sum it all up. So he said, you can sum it all up by this: love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. At some point, somebody asked him, so who is my neighbor? And then, because the Jews couldn't stand the Samaritans, he narrated a story of a Samaritan. This is the classic, the famous Good Samaritan story, the story of a Samaritan who helps a Jew. The two couldn't stand each other. And so basically by that story, Jesus was saying, your neighbor is that person you can't stand. So even for the Christian who is so indoctrinated, they can't stand any other person of any other religion, the command of Christ is love them as you love yourself. Do you want to be treated with respect? When your children are sleeping, do you want them to sleep in peace? Will you be happy if somebody came with a megaphone and stood behind your door and they were screaming, yeah, yeah, yeah? Would you be happy? If you won't be, would you like to offer your neighbor the same kind of respect? If somebody speaks about Christ in a terrible way and trivializes him and calls him whatever, will you be happy? In that same vein, will you treat other people's deities with some respect? It's a very simple principle. You can forget all the commandments. You can argue, but it's simple. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. And then love the Lord your God with all your heart. If you truly, listen, every human being on earth is God's creation, okay? We are all the affections of his love. If you cannot see God in another human being, the Bible actually says that you are worse than a murderer. It says you can't say you love God whom you don't see and hate your brother whom you see. Hate speech has no place in Christianity. Like, there is absolutely no place for it in Christianity. Of course, if you look at church history, church history is not pleasant. We have countless accounts of violence committed with the excuse of doing it for Christ. It's the same with many other religions. It's terrible. And because of that, in certain parts of the world, when you show up and you say you're a Christian, they don't trust you. They meet you with hostility because Christians at some point tried wiping them out. Genocides were committed in the name of Christ. So many terrible things have been done in the name of Christ. The good thing is Christ gets to speak for himself. So you can claim to be speaking in the name of Christ, but we have the advantage of getting to know that he actually spoke for himself. And he said that if you claim to be his disciple, if you claim to love him, then it is just one command. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind, and love your neighbor as you love yourself.
I mean, indeed, fascinating stuff for the pastor and evangelist. Karim, you are a devout Muslim. And just wrapping up, if we are to consolidate this religious tolerance, I know you said it was superficial, but if we are to move beyond the superficiality of it to one that is more substantive, how do we do it? Using this incident as an opportunity.
Yeah, Evans, I think first what we need to do is to be very sincere with this conversation and generally in our lives. And decenter this sort of obsession that we have with our various
Hello, Karim. Oh, I may have lost him there. I have Nana Nsako on the line. Nana, so how do we do it?
Nigeria.
Oh, sorry, he's back. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, I lost you briefly. Please proceed.
yeah. I was just saying that I appreciate that if this conversation were had is somewhere in Saudi Arabia or say northern Nigeria, where Muslims are predominant, the reverse would be the case in the way that we have heard literally sermons from Christian leaders on what an ideal sense is and all. My view of this is that whatever tolerance we appear to.
Unfortunately, Karim, I'm losing you. Let me give that to Nana Nsako. Nana, how do we
Yeah.
make this one that presents an opportunity for us to consolidate the tolerance that we currently enjoy? How do you go about it?
Well, first of all, we must all understand that undoubtedly we all believe we came from God. The argument and the fight is the way in which we go back to God. So one says I'll go through Muhammad, the other says Christ, one says Buddha, whoever it is, Shintoism. So it is the going back, Evans. That's been the problem for humanity. It's not coming to us because we came from one source. So we should understand that. And the question to ask yourself is, has the Muslim faith, Christian faith, Shintoism, traditional, has they done any harm against maybe anybody's human rights? If the question is no, then let God be the judge. If you come to God and He says, oh no, you didn't come through Muhammad, you didn't come through Christ, so I'm not going to let you in, God becomes the judge, not us. And you see, all these Western countries that we yearn and pray and fast and do all nights to go to, Evans, we pray more than that. But when we get there, they live more virtuous than us. And I think that's where the problem is. How come, you go to China, to Japan, they don't follow any Christ or anything, but they are principled, they are honest, they are truthful, they work hard. If you open a business and you employ them, they make sure the business goes. We come here and we are praying and fasting and jumping and jigging, and yet we will collapse your business. Somebody will run away from work and go to church. So I think that's where the problem is. I think we are more happy with the title rather than the way of life. But you see, Evans, I'm telling you, Christ himself was a reformist and a traditionalist. Christ himself was an absolute reformist and a traditionalist. And so if we really want to be Christ-like, then that's what we have to be, reformist and traditionalist. But what we are doing now, beggars belief, if you ask me. So if we are going to solve this problem, it's the way back that's the problem. And we are not the judges of the way back. So leave that to the Father. If you come to him and he thinks you didn't come through the right channel, it's his business. And then we will learn to live in harmony. So far as somebody hears religion, it's not killing children or raping women or stealing, that's fine. Leave them be.
Hopefully, Karim can hear me. Karim, can you hear me?
Yeah, I
Okay.
can hear you, Evans.
Yes, you wrap it up for me, and Nana Sakwa has laid out for us
Yeah.
how we can consolidate this. You were also onto something when we lost you briefly.
Yeah, I mean, I won't belabor it. I think I just want to quickly just stress on Nana's point that he made, that Christ was a traditionalist. And I think that indeed that is very, very true. Traditionalist in the sense that from where he came from and from what he did, he was a traditionalist. We need to do away with the contempt. This idea that some gods are smaller gods and casting aspersions and feeling too big and too arrogant in our own faith, to always continue to rile them up and insult them is not something that we must continue, because when they fight back, like we have seen elders from Nogokpo do, we would know that it cannot be the way to go. There's a reason Christians will not do it to Muslims and Muslims may not do it to Christians, because between the two of them, especially in our own experiences, we've seen that they like to easily fight because often they have the numbers. And that is why African traditional practitioners, or whatever that is, has always or have always been the scapegoat. We need to be respectful of other people.
Yeah, and I think that's really it sums it up: being respectful of each other, and whether you are African traditional religion, Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, whatever it is, living together in harmony is the watchword. And thank you all for connecting. Nana Kofi Akwa, Nana Sakao, Reverend Teria, and of course Kareem. And I know many of you have joined us with your thoughts. Unfortunately, I can't pull up your comments on our WhatsApp console, but I know the debate is happening, and it's happened for a week now. And as Kareem ended by saying, just be respectful of each other. Well, that's it for Ghana Connect tonight. Locker Room is up next with the lads.
Hello, I'm Lee James, host of Sports World on the BBC World Service. For the best of previews to the sporting weekend, listen to George Addo Jr. on The Locker Room on Joy 99.7 FM.
Live on radio, live online. This is The Locker Room on Joy 99.7 FM with George Addo Jr.
The 2023 European football calendar climaxes with the biggest game of the season. It's Eyes to the Right in Istanbul.
Final history-chasing Manchester City against the 14-time European champions Real Madrid. And now De Bruyne, and they're toying with them. Bernardo Silva again! You don't save that one! Elation for Guardiola! Explosion from the supporters! Wonderful finish from Bernardo Silva! And there's nothing that Courtois could do about that! And City have taken a giant stride towards Istanbul.
Looking for the goal that might kill it once and for all. Martinez does it, delivers it, and surely on their way now to the Champions League final. Rolling back the years, bringing back the good times. Inter Milan book their tickets for the Champions League final.
Three-time champions International face English champions Manchester City, who are looking for their first Champions League triumph. We'll preview the big final and try to explain the reasons behind the big moves in the transfer window we witnessed this week. Also coming up.
But it's still in play. Gets the ball across. It's in the back of the net. Oh my word! Percy Tau Stadium into raptures. Let's just have a look at this artistry. First of all, that beautiful 1-2. A little bit too deep. El Shahat spots Percy Tau. In it goes, in the corner. An absolute delight to the eye. El Shahat. Run, a surging run. The ball goes up. It's in the back. There's a good opportunity. This is surely going to be two. Look at that. Caraba smashes it in. Into the corner. Nice touch. That is absolutely sensational. Can he get the ball across? It's there for the taking. It's in the back of the net. Oh my word. How about that?
The CAF Champions League final will take centre stage on the continent as Wydad and Atli tussle for the right to be crowned kings of African football. We have a preview ahead.
8-7, she leads the tiebreak. Match point. Swiatek to put away the forehand and to reach a fourth Grand Slam final and a third here in